right, Sunny Inkstarzz of Inkstarzz.com. On the line with Dr. Elisa English. Hey, how you doing, Doc?
How are you, Sunny? Nice to be with Inkstarzz.com.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so first I want to start off, I see you online talking about your editorial on sex addiction and porn addiction. So I wanted to ask you, would sex addiction and porn addiction be considered to be a mental health issue?
Absolutely. It is it's part of the continuum of compulsivity. So it's more about the obsessive-compulsive disorder that is part of what we call the DSM-4 in mental health classification. But it's at some point, it has been recognized in some areas to be able to stand alone on its own as sex porn addiction. But right now, it's sort of classified under compulsivity disorder.
Oh, okay. So I also want to ask you on that same topic. Do you feel sex addiction and porn addiction can ruin a marriage or relationships?
Oh, absolutely. It ruins marriages and relationships all the time. I think when many things can ruin a marriage and a relationship, it doesn't take something as serious as sex and porn addiction. But I think when people exhibit all sorts of compulsive and obsessive disorders and behaviors, it has an impact on a relationship, particularly if the other partner is not necessarily a willing participant in your compulsive behaviors.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I understand. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about depression also. If a person doesn't know they're suffering from depression, what are some signs they could look for to find out?
Oh, wow. It's an assortment of signs: lack of inability to sleep, irritability, digestive problems, lack of concentration, somewhat emotional about almost everything, eating disorders, bowel disorders, all sorts of things like that can say any three of those is a classification for depression. You would need to have what we call three risk factors to have a classification. So there's a litany of possibilities around depression in terms of how depressed you really are, say on a scale of 1 to 10. So the more of, say, the 10 risk factors, if you have more of those, you're probably a lot more depressed than you should be. And also how long you've been suffering from those risk factors. Like how long have you had sleep disorder? How long have you suffered from eating disorder? How long have you felt irritable, lack of concentration, lack of focus, suicidal thoughts? Those kinds of things start to really help us to identify someone who has a serious depression problem.
Wow, I didn't know that could play a part in it. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually, you have to be, for the classification to hold up in the DSM-4, you would need, when I say the DSM-4, that's the diagnostic manual that we use for in psychology. What you need to have at least three. The unfortunate part about that is a person can have one, say, a suicidal thought, and that can actually pull them over the edge, even though they've been eating okay and not necessarily that irritable. That's the unfortunate piece of it. And so to get the kind of treatment you need the classification, you see? So there's some disparity, if you will, in terms of how we respond as a society and what your real illness is.
Wow.
Okay.
So I also want to ask you about, so we know gospel kind of runs the world right now. Why is it so easy for one to acknowledge the problems of others, but hard to acknowledge their own issues?
Because we don't necessarily self-reflect. We tend to, when we look in the mirror, we don't necessarily see ourselves and the deficiencies in our own character and personality. We tend to define ourselves through the weakness and the deficiencies of others, and so that helps to give us strength. And so part of why we do that as human beings is because we need to feel we need to feel connected. We need to feel needed. We need to feel empowered. when we see people who are suffering or deficient in various areas of their life, that helps us to feel more euphoric about the things that we're doing, whether it's good or bad. So that's just the way the brain sort of reacts to day-to-day life. It's interesting because, in a way, if the brain didn't react that way, you would have a lot more people quite depressed about their own situation. Because if people were self-reflective, they would certainly see that they're as deficient as the next person. But
right.
we tend to feel that, it's funny when you look at people who suffer from addiction, right? So a heroin addict would say, well, whew, lucky I don't use crack. And I always find that quite interesting because to them, heck, I'm using, heroin. Look, I don't do that kind of thing. But you see how those crack-addicted people, you see what they do. They're willing to do this, and they really rationalize disobedience to their own self. So it's very interesting.
Yes, indeed.
I just want to go back to something about the sex addiction and porn addiction, if that's okay. It's interesting because we have people who are very much interested in, say, our lifestyle, whether it's an alternative lifestyle or not, and why people tend to choose or select a relationship that doesn't necessarily carry with them those same characteristics always baffles me, because you have people who they can get along quite well and both can watch all the porn they want, because it's not just it's not a male-only issue. It's women who are also addicted to porn. So, and they like the adrenaline rush associated with it. It's like having, all sorts of alternative sex. You have women who like men who like men. You have men and women who like additional people in their life. And so then is it necessarily an addiction when the consequences are not necessarily as serious? You see what I mean? So you need to have those consequences when porn and sex starts to impact your day-to-day life. Like you said, break up a relationship or marriage. Those are serious consequences. But if your partner is willing, it may not have any consequences to it. So we look at just deceptive intelligence.
All right. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, yeah. I read one of the articles about self-love. What are some ways a person can gain that love for themselves like they should have?
Well, self-love is certainly, as we get older, it's much harder to kind of see and identify self-love in ourselves, because it would be great if we can have self-love in those very early formative years and in the developmental stages between 0 and 5, right, where we have high self-confidence. We're taught self-confidence. We're taught self-pride. We don't feel, somewhat, threatened by racism and sexism and all the things that can take away your self-pride and your self-dignity. But I think as we get older, the older we get, and we become more self-reflective, right, around our deficiencies, we want to do things to improve. And so it's important. I think it's important to see your deficits in order to make improvement. Because if you think everything is perfect, then that doesn't necessarily mean you have self-love either. Because you may say, oh, I eat 5 meals a day, and so what, I put on 25 pounds. That's me. I love myself. You know what I mean? Please, I have confidence because just because you want to stay thin, I have confidence. And I look at people and I'm like, but you're killing yourself. This is not about confidence. So again, I appreciate people who are able to appreciate their weight gain and see it as a confidence booster. But you have to face that there's potential health risks associated with that, and it can have all sorts of consequences for you. So, you should be reflective around your deficiencies and try and self-reflect so that you can make improvement in your life. You need to sort of leave people, when I say leave people alone, I say don't allow what others say to impact you, okay?
Right.
Deal with See, because your inner voice will tell you a lot. It's not in a psychotic kind of way. Your inner voice will tell you a lot, but we tend to talk ourselves out of everything, and nobody's standing there. Actually, nobody's on our shoulder. No little green man from the front. It's us telling us, I'm going to do, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So, you need to accept that. You need to ignore people. You're going through your struggle in life and your journey in life, and you'll take that journey as long as, your health will permit you to, and be happy with that. And, don't compromise. If there's don't feel so low about yourself where you just say, well, I'm just going to settle for this, because settling will certainly pull your energy, your drive, and disempower you. So when you make those decisions that, I'm just going to settle, believe me, you will not have self-confidence and self-love. That's certainly the enemy to self-confidence and self-love.
All right. It seems like a lot of young guys feel like they have to be a thug to get respect. And it also seems like a lot of our young ladies feel like they have to sell themselves physically to get ahead. What should be done to help our youth gain more self-respect?
We should show them self-respect. So they are really mimicking what they see older people do. So, again, Sonny, it starts from in the household and the caretakers and the people around you. Children are like mirrors, right? They look at you in awe. You ever look at a little child and they're looking up at you like, look at him, he has eyes, and look at those nostrils. They're not staring at you because you're some exotic creature. They're staring at you because they're learning your behavior, your pattern. It helps them to develop. So, no, I don't expect a gangbanger to have respect for adults when we don't have respect for ourselves. We show weakness to them. We show shucking and jiving. We show a lot of placating. We show them and demonstrate weakness all the time. It's almost that they don't want to be us. So they have to make decisions around how they develop their strength and their character and their personality. And they do that by trying not to be what they think adults are. And that's usually going against status quo. So to go against the status quo means I'm not going to do this way, I'm going to do it that way. Part of it is they're also young. So when you're young, you have a lot more risk-taking ability in your mind. You think, life is infinite, right? So you don't see it as finite. So the issue is they don't want to be adults. They don't want to do what they see we do. But it's funny that when you see young people around people who they consider strong and powerful and impressive, they act differently. So I would use let's say I don't know your age, but let's say if you were talking about somebody like Muhammad Ali. There's nothing that, right? If we were talking about Muhammad Ali, say Malcolm X, and let's just throw Farrakhan in for safe measure, right? Okay. You would have 4 men responding to a Minister Farrakhan, a Malcolm X, or Muhammad Ali, right, and want to mimic that kind of behavior, want to dress like them, act like them, walk like them, talk like them, right? When you look, right? But then when you look at when you ask them what they want to be like their teacher or their professor or the cop, they say, oh, that person is broke. They run out of the house at 9 o'clock, scared somebody's going to fire them from their job. That's how young people think. They have no backbone. Young people like power, and actually most people like power. So being in a gang represents power. So the only way that we can see a change in them is if we show a change in ourselves. And you notice one of the complaints that's coming up even around Obama is that people think he doesn't represent strength. And that's a scary philosophy that is somewhat being, to me, overplayed out in the media, that he seems to have this weakness and this kind of thing, because people like strength. That is just period, point blank. And young people like people who carry themselves with strength, and that's why they would probably respect 50 Cent more than they would respect, say, the nurse at the local hospital. That's just it. So we have to show them a lot more strength and different in other ways, because the people that I mentioned prior all have positive attributes, and we could possibly show them, but we tend to show them things. We tell them not to drink, yet we're drinking like there's no tomorrow. We tell them not to smoke, yet everybody in their family is smoking. We tell them to go to school, but then nobody in their family really went to college or graduated anywhere. We tell them to have healthy relationships. All they've seen is domestic violence and people screaming and hollering and yelling around the place. You know what I mean? This is their reality. Everything is in contradiction to what we say. So, yeah, they find their own family that they feel have real, true values and goals. And young girls, that was pretty much for the boys, although young girls are like you said, just as influenced by power as anything else. If you notice, girls want to be with men who they think are powerful and have money, but a lot of that is also driven by their desire for material things. And you got to remember, the media, as much as we love it as people that are involved in the media, and it has so many benefits, it is a major influence on young culture and pop culture. And so young people want to have all these designer bags and, you know, wear the clothes they see Beyonce wear and this one and that one, but they simply can't afford that stuff. You know, you simply, and what happens is your mind, again, will play tricks on you deceptively and tell you, well, if I get with this guy, I can get that. No one has told them and helped them to figure out that, you know, that's not that serious, and there's other routes to take in order to achieve and obtain the kinds of things you want out of life.
You did that on it. Thank you for that one. All right. Well, so Dr. Elisa, where can everybody find you online?
They can always Google Dr. Elisa English, and, you know, a lot of stuff will come up. They can always go to askdralisa.com, and I know that Sonny will shout me out on Twitter so I can get some of his Twitter followers, because the doc is not good at Twitter. She hasn't been that good at Twitter. And, you know, it's always Facebook, you know, Facebook Dr. Elisa English. And hey, they can find me all 24 hours a day. I am not too big for anybody.